भागवते भगवन्तौ पुनः पुनः ईश्वरो गुरुरात्मेति मूर्तिभेदविभागिने व्योमवद्व्याप्तदेहाय दक्षिणामूर्तये नमः। ॐ शान्तिः शान्तिः शान्तिः। श्रीगुरुभ्यो नमः। हरिः ॐ तत्सत्। So, we yesterday dwelt upon this particular verse number 8, Sariram Havihi. So, and what is that Sariram Havi? Essentially, when you have this a kind of an identification with the external reality, and then we have this Dehatma Hava, this is conscious and this is me, and we have so much of obsession. So by Sariram Havi, he's saying that that particular thing is sacrifice. That means a lower order of consciousness is sacrificed, is given away to attain a higher level of consciousness, because a person, is sort of explaining one thing leads to another. So once a person has mastered the understanding that this whole sansara and how the Banamatrikas, Jnana Dhisthana Matrika, we have done it in the first chapter, that this Jnana Bandha, Jnana Dhisthana Matrika. So whatever faulty knowledge we have is essentially because we do not understand the secrets associated with this Vadi knowledge, the knowledge that we articulate, that we externalize the truth. And then we are lost in it. And therefore, in a way, we are dissociated from our pure consciousness with the help of language, with the help of all these Varnamatrikas. Once we gain knowledge of these Varnamatrikas, then we start a return journey. And through this process of mantra sadhana, we are trying to discard lower levels of consciousness to reunite with our Swarupa. There, the second, the step that was is Sariram Havihi. And then what happens to this guy who is able to sacrifice his identification with his body, with his mind, and all the external reality around him? He's able to sacrifice it now. Then what happens to him? The next sutra says, Jnanam Arnam. Sariram Havihi. So it's like this Chaitanya is like that Shruva, with which you are sacrificing your own mind. And now he's saying Yanam Arnam. So Arnam is what? By Arnam, we are not talking about any food grains. Arnam is basically anything which is worthy of being consumed. Jnanam here is Arnam, means anything which is meant for our consumption. Now, consumption can be looked at in two different ways. One is the consumption creates in us life force. So there are two ways to look at this word Arnam. One is an extension of the idea of Sariram Havihi. Similarly, whatever you eat, you destroy it. You take Arnam, that means what? You destroy that rice because it undergoes some transformation, but it undergoes transformation in order to create positive life energy in you. So Jnanam Arnam means knowledge is his food. That can be looked at two different ways. So Kshemaraja is saying in Siva Sutra Vimarshini, do you remember in the first chapter, the Siva Sutras told us that Jnanam Bandhaha, knowledge is the source of bondage. And then third sutra was Jnana Dhisthana Matrika. The foundation of all knowledge we have are these Varna Matrikas. Because to have any knowledge about anything, we need a medium. It is always mediated through language, with language. Without it, no knowledge. And whenever you're talking about knowledge, you're talking about A, B, C. That means it's different from who you are. There is some kind of a Veda Pratyaya. You are talking about an awareness which is now differentiated. a consciousness which is differentiated. There is a knower, there is a known, and there is a process of knowing. All these Bheda Pratha, these whole processes of dualities, if they are there, there is Jnanam. That kind of Jnanam becomes his food. What does it mean? This Jnanam, he's going to eat it up. It's symbolically, metaphorically saying that that particular kind of jnani or sadhaka or mumukshu who is further trying to go up in his consciousness doesn't discard jnanam, but he subsumes all of it. He eats it up, digests. So, for example, yena tajjitejate tatyaja, that is there in Vedanta. All the sadhanas you are doing, like Sravana, Manana, Nididhyasana, with all this, you want to do Vairagya. And then you have Atmijnana. So the means that you are adopting for this particular act of sacrifice, abandon them because you have to move further up and they become useless. Like a person does a master's degree, he wants to do PhD, then master's examination and the timetable books, they become irrelevant. He picks up a research topic and he has to work on it because he's going to a next higher level. He abandons it. Similarly, this bandhatmaka jnana, that means the knowledge in which there is Triputi Bheda, knower, known, and the process of knowing. That kind of jnana, Bhedatmaka jnana, differentiated perception. Because what is the problem with differentiated perception? If we persist with our bookish knowledge, we will go on doing this vichara. This is a very popular theme among Vedantists also. So you go on discussing and all these Vedantic prakriyas and arguments and philosophies and everything. Thakur Ramakrishna Paramahansa used to say one beautiful thing, that Bhagavatam, if you cross it, if you twist it, you wring it, one drop of enlightenment will not come out of it. There is not one drop of rasa about Lord Krishna in Bhagavatam. You can mug it up, you can read it, but nothing is there. These are all words. But you have to read Bhagavatam. But once you have read Bhagavatam, then you start looking for, you start meditating on what is this Krishna consciousness, what is this Krishna Tattva, what is Atma, what is Bhakti. Bhakti is not in that book. For sadhana and all, it's all fine. But once we have known all this, we dump that book. There was a professor of mine, and he used to always make fun of it in the research methodology class. And he would say that you can read a lot of research methodology, but once you go to the field to start doing actual research, anthropological survey, many of the theoretical ideas that you have on how to do research will completely become useless, because there, like for example, all the training you have about how to fight a war is not so much relevant. Once you are actually in the war field, you fight it. Similarly, all these sadhanas and the prakriya through which we are trying to make sense of what is what, and this whole set of diversities and dualities, that he eats up, means he digests. Why? Because he'll digest and he'll convert all this into unified God consciousness. That is beautifully, that is mentioned. So let's first look at the Siva Sutra Vimarshini, and then we will look at these commentaries, and then we'll have look at some interesting viewpoints. Yat jnanam bandha iti uktam tat adyamanatvat yoginam annam. Whatever was said as jnanam bandha in Sambhavapaya in the first chapter, Sutra number 2, that adyamanatvat means that is going to be consumed by this jnani, by this yogi. Therefore, it is annam. So he'll, in a way, eat it up, he'll eschew it, he'll subsume it, he'll transform it, he'll transcend it. Evam param Jnanakaya sthitasya annam kim ahacha. So if a person, that sariram havihi, he has come here, what kind of food he eat? What is his annam? Jnanam annam. Jnanam atra param samyag uktam prakaranadvaye. He's saying that it's very clearly mentioned that this is what is mentioned. That Jnanam was mentioned, that is bandha there. Now it is Jnanam, is Arnam it is mentioned. And there are two different contexts. But we are talking about one thing, that is we start our journey inwards towards self-realization. We might do all the sadhanas, we might read all this, but this lexiconic knowledge have to be digested because we want to transcend these words. You remember that emphasis on paravak. Paravak is just a state of pure self-awareness and consciousness. There is no object. It doesn't describe anything. That it is at a state of pure self-awareness. When it becomes Vaikari, then it starts narrating the world. It is coming to a sthula level. Then you have, Shukshma and Sukshma and Sukshma Stula and Stula. There are different layers in which it travels from consciousness to certain expression through sound. And therefore, he is mentioning अस्य च यत् पूर्वं ज्ञानं बन्ध इति उक्तं तत् अद्यमानत्वात् ग्रस्यमानत्वात्. अद्यमानत्वात् means ग्रस्यमानत्वात् because that is grasita yoginam annam. Yat sambaditam prak. That is what is mentioned. And there is another text that he refers. But we'll look at a detailed small commentary at the bottom. Then we'll come back to these commentaries. Jnanasya annarupatam varnayati is describing the annarupata of jnanam. And what is it? Purvasmin jnanam bandha iti yad uktam. Whatever was mentioned in the first chapter as jnanam is the cause of bondage. This differentiated verbal knowledge, this cognitive tool that we have created for ourselves to make sense of this world, that is the basically the cause of bondage. Why is it bondage? Because it is taking us away from that non-dual consciousness. We are lost in the details. And therefore he is saying tasya adhyamanatvena grasarupataya grasyamanatvena yoginam krite tad annam eva bhavati. Because the deeper aspirant of spiritual self-awareness would basically eat it up, digest it, chew it, and will transcend it. Tatra jnana sabdena ajnana muktam. What was mentioned is jnanam bandha, chaitanyam atma jnanam bandha. You remember we had a long debate on that. Chaitanyam atma jnanam bandha. If you together read first sutra and second sutra, you can do sandhi vicheda in a different way. Chaitanyam atma ajnanam bandha. So by jnana, there we had discussed it in different ways. One is that it is actually ignorance is the cause of bondage. Then if you want to see that as jnana, that is aparipakva jnana. Jnana which is not liberating is the cause of bondage. So all the aparavidyas in the samsara, whether it's physics, chemistry, maths or anything, they will not liberate us. Sometimes if you think about some of the fantastic minds we have in this world, like this person, Stephen Hawking, who passed away, and then now we have some of the smartest brains talking about top sort physicists. You listen to them on the YouTube, there's so much of discussion about different advanced theories about cosmos, about consciousness and all that. If you actually try to feel, do they feel really fulfilled? Are they liberated? Or they are still affected by limitations of the consciousness which characterizes others, all of us. Broadly, they are the same human beings. Because enlightenment is not necessarily because one has an extremely smart mind, but it's because that fellow is graduating from the mental thing to the psychic and to the spiritual, deep spiritual thing. That is a different kind of Obviously, a Ramana Maharshi cannot match in terms of mental smartness any of the physicists that we are talking about. Or Thakur was not very educated. But what he had was a deeper understanding, and where the mind was not the compass, it was not showing you direction, but there was a deeper realization in the heart that was showing them. That's what is wisdom, which is just beyond knowledge. That's what he's saying here. Jnana sabdena ajnanam uktam ajnanam eva sarva vidha bandhanasya karanam asti. It's ignorance which is the cause of all sorts of bondages in forms and names. Ataha eva paratattva bhuvusuna. The person who is interested to understand what is that paratattva, that means parasambit, that pure thing which is referred to as Chaitanya Mahatma. If you want to know that, Yoginatasya, by that Yogitasya, Annavada Vinasartham Vakshanameva Kartavyam. He must destroy these knowledges. Really? No, you have to understand. You cannot graduate to the next level having passed through it. So obviously you have to know, you have to, this whole cognitive process through which we are doing spiritual sadhana, it's important. But we're going to use the mind to abandon the mind, to go to the next level. That is what he's saying, that this is bhakshana yogya, bhakshanameva kartabhya, kavali kartavyam iti bhavaha. So you must finish it up. Bhasmisat kuru jnanagni. So earlier we mentioned jnanagni sarva karmani bhasmisat kurute arjuna. So in jnana, everything can be burnt. And then he's saying, so jnana will be of two kinds. One is the bhedatmaka jnana and abhedatmaka jnana. The abhedatmaka jnana is Chaitanya Swarupa. It is not knowledge of something. It is pure consciousness. It is perfect understanding, not understanding of something. It is pure Chaitanya. That is liberating. That is not arnam in that sense. So there will be another interpretation of what does it mean to say, is jnana is only, what about atma jnana? That is also jnana, right? Yeah, that jnanam, then arna will mean something else. Arna there will mean pushtikaraka, that which sustains the yogi, that pure knowledge which sustains the yogi. But all other lower level of perceptions which are differentiated, which are externally oriented, whether they are subtle or gross, all these jnanas are to be abandoned. And because we have to go above it, then you have that pure jnana, that particular yathartha jnana. This is aparipakva or yathartha jnana. Sutre asmin jnana sabdena yadi swarupa bhuta parama shiva vivarsmatmakam jnanam grihyate. Then you know that flip is saying, okay, if jnana means aparipakva jnanam or ajnanam, or ajnana moolavhuta jnanam, jnana which has at its root ajnana, that kind of jnana is the cause of bondage. And what do? You eat it up, digest it, transcend it. But if jnana means swarupa bhuta parama shiva vimarsatmakam, that parama shiva, that parasambit vimarsatmakam, jnanam grihyate, if you look at it that way, tadapi tasya anna rupatam naiva hyate. That also remains as anna. In what sense then? Yato hi yoginaha krite tat paritrupti hetutvena. You need to have liberation, right? We're looking for a fuller realization. Why? What is this? What is the symptom of our bondage? There are two words we had read in the first chapter. Swatyantra hani and apurna manyata. Always having a sense of insufficiency and loss of sovereignty, lack of sovereignty, and a feeling of unfulfillment. That is a fulfillment deficit, if I can put it. So these are symptomatic of our imperfect state of being. That is the state of our bondage. We always feel never satisfied, never contented. We are not fulfilled. And second thing, we are not in control of ourselves. We are not control of everything. We feel weak, powerless, and we feel that we are not being able to experience that fullness. And how do we do that experience? How do we regain our Swatantra? Yeah, we can get it if we return to that. Parama Shiva Bimarsatmakam. If that is the knowledge which gives us that pure self awareness of ourselves, then he's saying that also is Arnam. In what sense? Because Arna or food is that which gives you a sense of satisfaction, which gives you a sense of fulfillment, which gives you satiation, contentment. So this Atma Jnana, if we look at Jnanam Anna, Jnanam is that Yathartha Jnana, which is Atma Jnana, that is also Annam. Why? When we take Anna, we feel fulfilled. When we have that sort of pure Atma Jnana, then we feel fulfilled. So in that sense also, Jnanam Anna. So there are two interpretations which have been given here. And he's saying Swatma Vishranti Karakam Asti. Shiva returning, that we are looking at metaphorical descriptions of it. So, Swatma Vishranti, there is no more agitation. You are returning and you are quietly being able to establish yourself. So, Jnanam Annam then are two ways to look at it. So, now the Vimarshini is now mentioning that earlier also is saying, Mrityum cha kalam cha kala kalapam. Now, when a person, through this God consciousness, through this meditation on the Atma Tattva, ascends within, dearer to himself, goes beyond his body mind complex, goes beyond his body mind identity, because he has already offered his body mind identity, Sariram Havihi, and then he has abandoned all his mental processes, because we said that he's going to sacrifice his mind in that fire of enlightenment, in the fire of awareness. Then what does that do? He's saying, no, you know what does that do? Mrityum cha kalam cha kala kalapam. That sort of a yogi who ascends to that higher level of self-awareness, Mrityu and Kala, both, the Lord of all of us, the Lord of death and time, and Kala Kalapam, and all the creations, all the things that we do, Punya and Papa and everything, Kala Kalapam, all our achievements, Bikara Jatam Pratipatti Samyam, and all the transformations that we experience, either we do it or we suffer it or we enjoy it, and then Pratipatti Samyam, and all kinds of experiences and understandings that we have. And then there's a little more detail about it. Ekatmya, Nanatmya Vitarka Jatam. Whether it is monism, everything is one. So you sit you sit in with the erect lotus posture and close your eyes and get into one samadhi avastha. Or, for example, you open your eyes, Jagrata avastha, everything is nanatva kalpana. You see everything is different from each other. All this monism and diversity, both of them, Vitarka Jatam, Tadasa Sarvam Kavali Karoti. He basically eats it up, these differentiated perceptions, and he finishes it off. There's a beauty to it. It's like we are all afraid of death. Death will come. During Corona, we have seen that in close waters. But then if you are actually face to face with death in life, beyond a point, death doesn't frighten you. Because you know it's going to happen. It's just a physical fact that's going to happen. And your mind goes to a level where it's no more scared of that happening. It knows that I'm going to cease to exist. I can't think. This body is not going to be there. But it will not have any problem. In a certain way, it conquers death. Similarly, when you realize the non-permanent, the evanescent, the transient nature of all that we see around us, that we overcome death in what sense? Everything is anitya. A deeper realization of this fact gives us the necessary understanding and the power of enlightenment, which makes this world of transient changes, transformations, less relevant, and it loses its grip over us. Things do happen, but you are not affected. So, like for example, you remember when you are a student and you are given a farewell. Remember the last year of your college days, and then you are given a farewell. You feel a little emotional, right? Coming out. So your student life is over. You might do another master, but the first masters you do, you are given a farewell, whether it's BA or MA. So they have a big farewell function in India, different colleges. So it's over. But imagine if you become a professor. Every year, new sets of students are coming into your classroom, and new sets of students you are graduating, and you're saying bye bye. You are wishing them all the best in their lives. You're not feeling any emotions. This is how it is. You're wishing them very well. They may be feeling a little emotional about leaving the academic institution, but you're already there. You have digested the truth about departures in life, and therefore you are not affected by the departure. It's not a departure. It's a departure so far as you see that as a departure. Otherwise, just an event. That word has no meaning. Similarly, saying he overcomes death and time and kalakalapam because he is now meditating on the deeper reality of his own existence, the truth of his consciousness, which is beyond and above. It's, Vishwamaya and Vishwotirna. That is the Siva consciousness. You are everywhere and you are beyond all this. That Paramashiva consciousness through meditation, when that fellow is now ascending to that level of self-awareness, he digests everything. And then he mentions again, iticha. Athacha, yat swarupa vimarsatmakam jnanam tata asya annam paripurna triptikaritaya. That is what he mentioned in the other commentary. Is remaining the same thing, that either you look at this anna word as what has to be finished off, or as what nourishes your consciousness, what gives you a sense of fulfillment. That is yathartha jnana, that paramashiva tattva, not a problem. That also is acceptable to us. Paritripti, purna paritripti karitaya swatma vishranti hetu taduktam vijnana bhairave. In Vijnana Bhairava Tantra, it is mentioned. Atra ekatama yuktiste yotpadyeta dinadinam bharita karita satra triptir atyanta purnata. So, Vijnana Bhairava Tantra, there are these 112 meditations to attain enlightenment. Let's imagine that any yogi picks up any of these meditations and he's trying to perfect it day by day. When he does that, he reaches that fulfillment. You don't have to, like, for example, there's a temple, especially North India, you will find there's one temple in which they have Ramji and the Ram Parivar, then you have Radha Krishna, and then you have Lord Shiva and Durga and Ganesh, and then you will have Hanuman and Navagraha in a corner. On the other hand, if you go to a South Indian temple or East Indian temple, you would have also in the western parts, not in the North Indian thing. So they would have a main temple in which either it is Devi or Ganesh or Vishnu or anything. Then the Parshva Devatas will have their separate temples. They don't put them all on a platform like a conference. But remember, a person who is a serious devotee, he would go to this temple where all deities are there, but he goes to the particular deity through which he connects to the absolute. It could be Hanuman, it could be Devi. He will say Namaste to all, but he has one Ishta Devata. And through serious sadhana of that Ishtadevata, he gets full fulfillment. Similarly, in the Vijnana Bhairav Tantra, you have several meditations that even one meditation, if you focus on it and you perfect it, what you get? He's saying Triptir Atyanta Purnata. You get that full satisfaction. You have that Niratisaya Ananda. That kind of jnana he's saying, that mentioning. Iti yuktir hi tatra dvadosottara sata bhumiga jnana rupa eva etacha spande. So in Vijnana Bhairava he's saying, any of these jnana, they are a means to realize and get a full sense of satisfaction and fulfillment, spiritual fulfillment. In that sense also jnanam annam, that is also fine, not a problem. Either annam, jnanam means differentiated knowledge, then the annam means that you digest it because you want to transcend further. If jnanam means actually non-differentiated God awareness, God knowledge, God consciousness, that is also fine. That which nourishes you can also be called arnam. That are the two ways of interpreting it. And he's saying Prabuddha Sarvadati state in the Spandakarika. And that is how he's mentioning, but there are certain additional comments. So you'd also look at it. We have ample time, so we can take that liberty of dwelling a little further on it. So if you look at how this is being interpreted by different, and the book which I refer to you, Lakshman Joji, he is a philosophical way of interpreting it, not going into line by line translation into English. He meditates on it. He's a philosophical meditation on it. So essentially, what is he trying to say is, it's like this: from many to one, right? This is the journey we have. Not from one to many. The creation is from one to many, but realization is from many to one. From gross to the subtlest. From a physical realization to a mental, emotional, intellectual, but ultimately a realization which has no name and form, which is pure consciousness. So from they say, asotoma sadgamaya, lead us from falsehood to truth. Tamasoma jyotirgamaya, from darkness to light. Murtyurma amritam gamaya, from mortality to immortality. And this particular Upanishadic vision of a spiritual journey is always from differentiated to the undifferentiated, from diversity to perfect unity without name and form, to pure consciousness. So therefore he's saying, he's focusing on that word, undifferentiated God consciousness. Okay, so there, what it would mean is that with this understanding of Varnamatrikas, then you have Sariram Havihi. You see, beautifully we are graduating to a higher level of consciousness. So all the realizations that we have, in Buddhism, there's a very good technique. How do you go to a state of awareness without thoughtfulness, without any thoughts? So they would say, okay, so in Vipassana meditation, so what do you say? Okay, so you're saying, okay, start describing yourself. So you are using language and thoughts, right? So, okay, now I'm thinking. So you focus on, okay, these are my legs are moving, my hands are moving, this. So by doing this, they are engineering a technique in us in which there is a watchful consciousness which is watching everything else, and that is isolated from all thoughts. Then you also are looking at your thoughts. You're just describing, now I'm thinking about it, now I'm going to do that, I emotionally feel this, there is a bit of pain in my stomach. You are externalizing all of them to the speaker, and then you will also externalize everything, and you'll watch everything, and there will be only consciousness. Everything else become irrelevant. Similarly, here, what they're trying to say is that all our sadness and joy in specific contexts, when we realize why they happen, we transcend them. We don't have to have You don't run to experience them because the magic is lost. It's like you're watching a magic show. Then you understand how that is done. You lose interest. You lose the magic loses its power for you. It doesn't have any hold over you anymore. Similarly, this particular sadhaka, that aspirant, now gradually by meditating on different aspects of his own consciousness and it's working at lower levels, he graduates to the next higher level, next higher level. That means many of the processes, many of the things which are real, they become unreal, they become irrelevant. Something subtler is becoming relevant, and then he goes further up, and that is how is jnanam annaha. So he's sort of filled with light and glory at the ultimate level, because that you remember that he experiences chamatkara in Shiva consciousness. You remember, all the time he has this vishmaya, the sense of wonder when he's going onward and onward. So it's not so relevant as in the Vijnana Bhairava Tantra that this 112 meditations which are there. It's not so much about which particular method of meditation you're adopting, but how deeply you are going on any of these methods. And when you go to the deepest level, you have a sense of fuller satisfaction. And then once we reach there, that jnanamannaha, which is trupti karana, that kind of yathartha jnana, you just have to continue to dwell there, because there is nothing below. By returning to the samsara, you're not going to get anything. Okay, so there are two ways to look at it. Will that person then not have food? Will he not sleep? If he meets his he meets his niece or nephew who is now going to the university, he'll not smile and talk to that boy or girl. He'll do all that. The only difference being that he is no more emotionally tied down to anything. He'll take food, but he'll not have any craving for food. He'll talk to people, but he'll not have any craving to talk to people. And he'll not feel lonely because he's not talking to people. So he doesn't become an antisocial or asocial. He becomes spiritual. He turns to God, and he sees everybody in that God consciousness. So that is how he sort of, and he's fully aware of himself. So, and then when we are trying to understand this, it will be important for us to remember earlier this particular word has been used in different other contexts. So you remember the first chapter, the second sutra was Jnanam Bandhaha. And then the eighth sutra was Jnanam Jagrata. Because he was referring that knowledge which is oriented towards external reality is gained through sense perception, through the jnana indriyas, and that doesn't happen during sleep or dream state. It happens when you are waking. Therefore, any perceptual knowledge is possible only during the waking state. Therefore, we had a discussion. If I look at that particular sutra, there was this jnanam jagrat, and what he's saying that you have that susupti avastha, jagarana. So jnana karmendriya dvaihi dasendriyehi jagrat vyavahara jagaranam prabodha jagarati uchyate. So through these jnana indriyas and karma indriyas, you are engaging with the external world, and that is what is called the jagrat avastha. So it is very, very important that you need to understand what it means to have. Okay. So sarva sadharanartha vishayam bahya indriyajanyam jnanam lokasya jagra jagaravastha. We had done it earlier. I'm just trying to compare different other interpretations earlier to put it in a particular context. So jnanam bandha we had discussed first, which is ajnana or aparipakva jnana, then jnanam jagrata. So jnana word is being used to refer to different levels of the consciousness relating to the outside and consciousness dwelling at different levels. So you have one jagrata avastha. Jnana bandha is essentially trying to say it covers all, whether dream state or Jagrata or anything. Its cause of bondage means what is not realization of the self is the cause of bondage. Then there was another 17th Sutra. And in the 17th Sutra, what we had done, Vitarga Atma Jnanam. See, Atma Jnana word has again come earlier. And what is Vitarga Atma Jnanam? Vitarga arthat what? Vishwatma Shiva Eva Asmi iti Anubhuti. I am verily that was Sarvagnya Sarvakarta cha Vyapakaha Parameshwaraha Sa Evaham Saiva Dharma iti Dadhyat Shivo Bhavet. When a person through his meditation realizes, remember this is Sambhavapaya, a very higher level of meditation. So when the Jnani meditates, that Sarvagya Sarvakartasya, because he identifies with that pure consciousness. That is Paramashiva. He doesn't see himself as isolated, different. There is no Bheda Pratiti. And therefore he's saying Sarvagya Sarvakartasya, Vyapakaha Parameshwaraha. Parameshwara is Vyapaka, all pervading. Sarvagya, omniscient, Sarvakartacha, omnipotent. And then Sa Eva Aham Saiva Dharma. So I am Saiva Dharma. I am realizing that my nature is no different from the Shiva, nature of Paramashiva, Saiva Dharma iti Dadyat. When this particular realization becomes strongest, established in us, then what happens? Tataha Shivo Bhavet, he becomes verily Shiva. And you remember when Parvati tells, Lord Shiva tells Parvati, do you know whatever these yogi things happens? And do you know why that happens? Whatever he says, it happens. Whatever he thinks, it happens. Do you know why it happens? And Parvati is smiling, why? Oh, of course, because he doesn't exist anymore. He has handed over himself to me. So it's me now dwelling in him. He has become my instrument. He has become a small tool in my hand. He is actually no different from me. So, therefore, Jnanam eva param brahma, jnanam vandhaya cheshyate, jnanatmakam idam vishwam, na jnanad vidyate parama, vidya vidyete mantriya, jnanam eva upadharaye. So, there are different slokas that we have looked at it. So, the third interpretation was Vitarka Atma Jnanam. So I am this. Taken to the highest level, he's saying, I am Shiva, Shivoham, Shivoham. Okay. And then now we are coming in the 9th mantra, in the Ditya Unmesha, 2nd chapter, Jnanam Arnam. Now, if we look at Vitarka Atma Jnanam, then we will interpret this Jnanam Arnam as what? Jnanam as Paripakva Yathartha Atma Jnanam. Vitarka Atma Jnanam, if you interpret it in the light of the verse, that the sutra number, formula number 17, the Jnanam here you are talking about is that perfect self-understanding, self-awareness, and that resuscitates us, nourishes us, gives us full satisfaction. There is nothing more to be achieved, and therefore that is Annam. However, if you look at this word Jnanam in the light of the 2nd sutra or the 8th sutra of the 1st chapter, Jnanam Bandha, Jnanam Yagarat, that means differentiated awareness, differentiated knowledge of the waking state, or which is the cause of bondage. If that is the kind of jnana you're talking about, then Arnam is what you consume and destroy. You digest it. So you dwell on this differentiated knowledge so well and you understand its limitations that you transcend and go to the next higher level. So this is beautiful, that if you can look at both, and then it will come again in the 3rd chapter, Jnanam Bandhaha, and we'll go there. And also Dhanam Atma Jnanam, that will also come. The Arnava, we have looked at it. We'll go to the Saktopaya and we'll go to the Arnavopaya, Jnana Dhisht, and all the Jnana Dhishtana Matrika, that will also come in the first. Sorry, that has already come in the 1st chapter. What is the foundation of this limited knowledge? Varna Matrikas. So when we have Samprabodho, when you have a perfect understanding of these Varna Matrikas, then you have mastered the secret, the password to unravel the mystery of self-awareness. because then this differentiated knowledge system, the differentiated world of reference, and the knower, they will dissolve because you are going to see through them. So the beauty of it is, Saktopaya is, there is a Bheda and Aveda both thing here. So we are going to do mantra sadhana, which is Vedatmaka. We're going to do puja. We're going to do upasana. What is the ultimate goal? To reunify ourselves and go beyond all that we are doing. Therefore, he says, what? Jnanam Annam. So with this, I would bring it to a close, because then on Thursday, we'll go to the next interesting thing, because slowly we are coming to a close of the second chapter. So we'll do the sutra number 10 on the coming Thursday. We have a little time, so anybody has any doubts or any questions, you can ask. One or two questions we can entertain.